G'day guys and welcome back to the Foil Project. Today we've got a very special guest on, Will Wilson from the Foil Shop. We'll be talking all things foiling. Take it away, lads.
Will has obviously worked at the stand-up surf shop for quite a while now and really was there when it transitioned into foiling. So how has foiling changed the stand-up surf shop for you?
Yeah, great question. Well, yeah, the stand-up surf shop originally was stand-up surf shop. There was the only products in there were stand-up paddleboards and sort of related products. And when I took over managing the shop, that's exactly how it was. Then what happened was we were really well positioned to jump into foiling when it just sort of started, and we just sort of dipped our toes in at the start, and that sort of was happening before I got there with a little bit from a few different brands, and it really was again stand-up paddleboards that, you know, with foils on the bottom essentially. And then foiling, as we know, took over and went nuts in the last, you know, sort of 3-4 years.
Yeah.
And that side of the business kept growing and growing, and what we were finding is that we were sitting in a position where people that stand-up paddlers is one market, and we can talk about that in a moment, and then foiling hits a crossover market, but it's not exactly the same market. They're subtly quite different, and so we were left with a bit of an identity crisis in a way.
Yeah.
And we built the brand as Stand-Up Surf Shop to a point where it was a well-known name and well recognized here in WA, so we didn't want to lose that. And the foil shop was sort of the natural progression from that as well.
Yeah, definitely. We also sort of integrating foiling and, you know, supping at the moment. It's grown, like downwinding has grown quite big in the last year and
for sure.
year and a bit.
Yep.
And so, you know, you're still having the name as the sup shop. You know, you can still both ways with the foiling.
100%. It's been really interesting to watch that, because originally the entry point for a lot of people, especially here in WA, into foiling was through stand-up foiling in the surf.
Yeah.
And then what we noticed is that trend sort of slowed down a little bit, and most of the people in the surf, well, then winging came in, but another thing in the surf went to prone. And now we're seeing with the introduction of downwind boards, both for downwinding, it's also that those boards are working amazingly well in the surf as well. So we're seeing a return back to that in the many forms that it takes.
One thing I was going to ask is, what was the first brand you got in at the shop for foiling?
I'm pretty sure it was GoFoil. From before I worked at the shop, I worked for the distributor for Starboard Sup for a few years.
Yeah.
And Starboard approached us in a collaboration with GoFoil, maybe like 3 or 4 years before the kind of the mass
boom.
introduction, the boom, if we want to call it that. And that was when the videos of Kai and Connor Baxter came out of them on like race boards, you know, 12'6" boards cut down and this kind of stuff. GoFoil at that time were, I'm not going to say they were the first, but one of the first to be putting, you know, sort of product out there that was available to buy in the mass consumer market. So yeah, GoFoil was first. Axis would have been, you know, not that far behind in the shop. So, yeah.
Well, when you first got the foils in, was it a bit like everyone came in and said, "Oh, what's going on in here? What are these?" Or was everyone like, "Oh, I know what that is already"? And
Matt, I still get that question every day.
Yeah.
Like, we've got a foil set up here, you know, it's sat at the front of the shop. It's just a board with a foil.
Yeah.
The front of our shop set up with a bit of a lifestyle section in the front, and there's a foil there. And the amount of people that just gather around it and they're like, what is this? So yeah, back then, I guess the first wave of people that came in with that question were people that were already paddleboarding or doing another sport. And the initial thing was not so much what is this, but how hard is it? Like, can I do it?
Yeah.
I think that was the first question that sort of came in. And I think back then the answer was probably no. Like, it was real hard. Back when, you know, here in Perth, we only had a couple of people foiling, really, like Nath foil Perth, and then Marcus were probably, you know, sort of right at the beginning, and then you know, sort of there was a few others, but just naming a couple, sort of rippled out from there. At that point it was hard. The gear wasn't easy to use. There was no compatibility. We were cutting you know, holes in the bottom of boards and sticking you know, boxes in. They all broke, you know, like it was a nightmare. And And so yeah, sort of that was the first question, is like, is it possible? And I think that question has now changed to what is the easiest way to get in, or how do I get into it?
The other question I was going to ask is, what bit of gear do you think came in and that was like the point where the shop started selling more and more foils? Like, what was there one bit of equipment which kind of caused the boom?
Yeah, the wingding.
Yeah.
So that was the bit of gear that changed everything.
Yeah.
Because with foiling, as we know, progression, and same with surfing, it comes from time on the foil. It doesn't come from those moments when you're sitting around trying to catch a wave or trying to get going. It comes from time on the foil. And winging, once you've got the basics down, you're winging for most of your session.
Yeah.
So if you're on the water for an hour and a half, you're probably on foil for at least an hour. That's a huge amount of time. Winging allowed the evolution of the sport to happen, I think, at the speed in which it did, because it allowed all of us to get on the water and learn how to foil. Yeah. People from, young lads like yourself all the way up to, we got guys in their 80s that are foiling.
Yeah.
So it just allowed that sort of full scale of progression. And then of course where there's lots of people trying to get in, then you're going to get the brands and people trying to create products that help support that. And that's where you've got brands and you've got people at the front end of innovation that they're 3 steps ahead. They're already trying that stuff before we know we need it, and or sort of evolving what we do have. So
yeah. Where do you think it's going to go in the next 5-10 years maybe?
Yeah.
Crystal ball. I don't know is the honest answer, but I've got my own sort of personal theory, and it is, we've settled on a design at the moment, which is front wing at the front, fuse in the middle, stabilizer at the back, and a mast somewhere between the two. The only thing is then is like what evolutions of that are possible. So we're going to see people then playing with all of those different components. People are going to play with fuses, masts, rear wings, front wings, the different combinations of the two. We've seen thousands of different aeroplanes in the world, biplanes, and then you look at some of the jet fighters are almost a single mono, which I know has been tried in foiling as well. So maybe we'll see some variation in that. My brain can't see past that design. And maybe there's someone out there that's working on, something that I don't know about, but I can't see past that design at the moment. My kind of idea of where the sport will go is that what happens is I don't know where we are in this design cycle, but where we go off in opposite kind of tangents. And then what happens is we start to realize the benefits of either end, and then we move back towards the center a little bit. And then we sort of tend to land on something that has the best characteristics of both ends. And we're starting to see that in, I guess, what we are currently calling mid to high aspect foils, where we've gone away from the big surf, thick, sort of those things, chord, and we're finding lift in other ways, which allows us to refine. So I think we're going to sort of settle down towards a design that becomes closer, and you'll see designs look more and more similar. We will start to see the best designs for each discipline pop out, which there's some pros and cons to this as a sport. But for example, if you look at the kite foil for the racing, they became so specific in sort of, and then the production, they're getting them so stiff and so high, and they became really expensive. But they were so fast and so efficient, and we might see that with winging. So that you then have the sort of a race sector that sort of comes out of it, and it almost becomes its own sort of independent foil range. And then we're going to have sort of a surf, potentially downwind and things, and then it's sort of how do they cross over.
What makes a brand or a company good to work with for the shop? Like, what things will they do well that makes you want to work with them for a long period of time, I guess?
Yeah, great question. It's really interesting. It's really multi-layered, that question, because there's several aspects that we need to look at. One is essentially, and probably the most important, is how does that brand land and support the customers? So it sort of builds up for us. And as a shop, we're looking to build long-term relationships with brands. So I'd say the first thing that I want to work with good people. Like we're just lucky enough to have Adrian from Axis coming over, hung out for a few days. He's probably the most humble, honest, and one of the most hardworking guys in the industry. So that instantly draws us to him. The other thing is the support in which a brand gives, and that is on so many levels. That's the support that they give the retailer, so that they give to us. That is around information flow, getting all the things that we need, things like just all the little stuff like product images, getting us, sort of marketing support and all of that sort of stuff, and then supply of products. The big one that we find really important is when a brand launches a new product, that we have it available in the shop. And we might not have enough to supply everybody, and I know some of you, apologies if you've missed out on stuff when it has been released sort of first up, but when we have access to product, it's then when a brand puts it out there, it's like really positive, because people can get on it, they can get feedback, and it can grow. So for us, that's super important. The other part is getting us the right information on that, so that we can actually be informed of it ourselves. Often when a new product comes in, I'm one of the last to write it, because we get it in, we sell it, and then the demo one's on the water the whole time. So for us to get a chance to build as much knowledge as we can is really important. That's why little things like Adrian and Army did it earlier in the year as well, coming over and spending some time with us. Yes, we had a great opportunity for them to chat with everyone, for customers and people from the shop and people connected, but I also got to spend some time with both of them to understand their brand a little bit more, understand where they're sort of looking to take the brand in the future, and how that sort of impacts, because something that we're really interested in is building, as we say, long-term relationships, and not looking at like the next hot thing that then we can't get supply of, and it disappears. We're starting to see more and more brands popping up all of the time. I get contacted by loads of different brands, and I'm sort of almost asking the question, if a brand contacts me, okay, well, if we're going to entertain this conversation, what are you going to replace? So like, how are you going to replace that brand? What can you do? And that's everything down to warranty support, pricing, supply of products, supply of information, all of those sorts of things.
Going back to like your whole demo system and everything, that's probably the best thing I think that the shop does.
100%. And Mike Galvo, who owns the shop, he's always had this philosophy with and supported people to get on the water. If we're not getting on the water, we don't understand what's happening, and especially with foiling. I have the aim that whenever a new product comes into the shop, that as soon as I can, I get one into demo, because I want people to ride it. I also want to hear back from people how it's going, because the other thing with brands is they'll release something and they'll give their side of the story, but the real side of the story for me is how is it actually going in the water. My customers, the people that I this, as Hugh, from working in the shop, it's a community. There's lots of friends that come into the shop, people that we know. I want my mates and people that I'm selling gear to be riding the best product that they can. The other part about it is it's a huge investment, especially when people consider that they might be wanting to change brand. Because when you get into a brand, and this is what people that are new to the sport sometimes don't understand fully, is that you're investing in a system. I'd love to be able to say, you can buy one wing and that's what you want to go. But anyone that foils, and I'm talking to pretty much everybody that foils, if you've got into foiling, you have changed a piece of your foil probably within the first year of you foiling.
Definitely.
And some people multiple times, myself included. So if you're looking to invest in a system, you need to have confidence in that system, and that system is going to provide you the options that you need down the track. And that's another big part of coming back to brands that we want to stock. Axis and Armstrong offer this incredibly well, is they have wings where you can get into the sport and learn on. You can change out components, and all of a sudden you're riding the same gear as their team riders.
Exactly,
Well, actually, the other day Noah and I and Max as well as Steve, who's usually our producer, we all actually got to go on or have a shot on one of the new brands that's coming into the shop, which is Code Foils, and we were very impressed by it. So we were just wanting to hear your opinions on it and what's happening around Code Foils with the shop.
It's exciting, right? Like, it's really exciting because you've got essentially Marcus, who I'm sure a lot of you know. He's a local legend. Dan, Marcus's brother Ben and James Casey have co-created Code Foils, and we're about a month or so away, month and a half away from getting the first full production ones into the shop. So we've got a demo set in the shop now, so it's kind of there, it's alive, and so it's fantastic. One, I mean, personally, I'm stoked because I love the guys. I'm stoked that they've managed to bring in something incredible into the market. I'm also stoked that it's been a lot of the designing and testing been done here in WA, so that's obviously really cool. But I think it's one to watch. Hey, like they're doing good things, and as we were chatting about earlier about sort of the best bits that a brand can do and what a brand does, those guys they're starting out with that. Like they're really easy to work with. They're providing us sort of good support and keeping us updated as the brand evolves. Like it's literally evolving.
In front of our eyes, pretty much. Yeah.
So I know the 850 is going to be coming into a bit of a range, and then they're looking at other wings and stuff as well. Everyone's frothing on it at the moment. There's two parts to it. One is that it's new and exciting. It's something that we haven't seen before. So that's always really cool. Again, as we touched on with demo gear, it's like come in and give it a go. Yeah. Because as you say, it's sort of this wing is going to hit more with the intermediate to sort of advanced riders. Once they bring in bigger sizes, that might change. We don't know yet, but really important to get on it to see how it goes.
Are you going to be the main distributor to start off with, or is East Coast blowing it up as well? Yeah,
they've got retailers on the East Coast and got retailers over here. They're basing their business model around supporting shops and having shops, as their sales outlet, which I personally. Working in a shop, but also, from experience, I think is really important.
Definitely.
From the opportunity to demo, service, and getting parts and keeping things on the water, it's really cool. And it is awesome, to have mates and people that we know and that's a big part of this industry. It's not huge. It's really nice to be able to have the guys come over, as I said earlier in the year, hanging out with Army and the boys, and then sort of Adrian came over, and that's really cool because then we get to hang out and go surfing with Larry Foiler and Drew from down south, and all these cool stuff. It's such an incredible sport, and the thing that I'm really enjoying about the sport myself is the energy in which is around it.
Yeah, the community.
I love just pulling up to the car park, going for a wing. It's almost always someone that I know to have a chat with, and it's just the nature of the sport of foiling so far has been fantastic. As a shop, but also as a community of people, it's sort of like trying to create and continue to create that positivity around it.
Yeah.
It's like, let's keep this sport fun. I think it is really important that we support the younger people coming in, and that we continue to grow as a community. We love that as a shop. We love people just coming in to say good day and hanging out because, it just creates a fun environment to be in and around.
Thanks so much for coming on today, Will. It's been a pleasure having you here and a great amount of insight into everything around the foil shop.
It's been awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Also, everything else foiling. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.